Okay, Hariom, blessings, dear Sangha, this sweet, sweet group that is continuing to form and gather around this very important topic of healing trauma through Ayurveda. And in these last couple weeks, we've dove really deep into Ayurvedic psychology. And so today we're going to do a little bit of a review of some of these faculties of this organ, this inner organ that we didn't even know we had, this energetic organ. And we'll do a review of those. And we're going to talk about how to tame the fluctuations of the mind through practice, through spiritual practice, and through really connecting with the flame of your true self, and how to fortify and water your connection to the flame of your true self through these practices and just through your daily mindset, really. And this is really foundational to healing any kind of trauma, because what happens when there's a traumatic experience, particularly or a situation in childhood that wasn't as nurturing as you needed it to be in the developmental years, or you had these other conditioned imprints that in that created a different kind of set point in your nervous system that makes you tend towards being highly sensitive or highly empathetic and feeling very just highly sensitive to the world around you, right? Sometimes you feel maybe overly exposed when you are in a lot of social situations, or there's a certain trigger of stress or a situation that will re-trigger this feeling of nervous system overwhelm, agitation, shutdown, anxiety, insomnia, all those kinds of things. And when that's happening in the nervous system, it has a cascade effect into our physiology. And it over years, if that set point, if that either repressed emotion or that set point in the nervous system isn't properly reset, well, then it can lead to all kinds of physical illness, ailments, dis-ease, processes in the body, and can contribute to numerous different imbalances in the body and chronic fatigue and chronic pain and things like that. So this conversation is very, very vital, and often the missing piece to the overall picture of health, of us having health and vitality and living a long, healthy life that is fulfilled and meaningful. So the foundation to being able to reset the nervous system and to also be able to reconnect with our vitality is to continuously connect with the flame of our true self, connect to our true self, feel connected to our center, to our heart, to the divine, to our higher self, to source, to the universe, to God, whatever way most resonates with you in that connection. But this flame of your truth is the divine that lives inside of you, inside of your higher mind, your deeper, your spiritual intelligence, the flame of your buddhi that we talked about. We'll define all these terms today again. And also in the seat of the sanctuary of your very own heart and your own inner devotion. So today we're going to do some of these practices together so that you can just have an embodied experience. And we'll do 2 of the breathwork practices that we've covered. I will cover those again today. We'll do those together. We'll chant the mantra we've been working with over the last few sessions, Hari Om, which as you remember, it connects us to the energy circuits in our body and gets prana, life force energy, flowing easefully through the system and creates waves of calm in the system. And as you'll remember, mantra is a tool for the mind that keeps our mind focused on something most productive, the highest goal, which is the mind to remember itself in its truest nature, in its highest nature, which is union with the divine. So mantra feeds the mind this sattvic food, this food that is full of harmony, full of light, and it feeds the mind these essential nutrients that allow it to be your ally and to serve your true self, to serve your spirit. Where unfortunately, it's usually for most of us in this world, the other way around, where we become a slave to the mind because we don't realize we have a mind. We think we are the mind. So when we have thoughts and feelings and we think something, say, scary or fearful or negative about ourselves, we just automatically believe the mind chatter to be true. It sounds like our voice. It sounds like reasonable, even if it's not reasonable. It's very convincing. And when we become a slave to the mind, that mind takes over and can really create a lot of problems. So the first step is to connect with our true self and allow the mind to not overrule us, but rather to condition the mind and discipline the mind in such a way that it becomes our servant in a beautiful way. And then it can really align with your higher goals and aspirations in life instead of sabotaging you from achieving them and experiencing all the goodness and beauty that life has to offer. So these are some of the reasons why these practices are so important and why we emphasize mantra and spiritual practice and why we gather together in community to do them together. So we'll open today with some breath work and a little bit of chanting the mantra so that you can have an embodied experience of that. I also have a little poem meditation for you. So I'll read that and then we'll take a moment of silence just to let that sink in so that you can start to commune with this flame of your true self. And then we'll go into an education portion around talking more about that flame of your true self and these different components of the energetic organ, your inner mind or your antakarana. And we'll break down all these things so that you have deeper understanding. Sound good? Great. Thank you. Okay, so let's start with the pranayama. And the pranayama practices, the two that we've been doing together, one is called the humming breath, the bee humming breath, and it's called Brahmary Pranayama, which translates to mean the bee humming breath. So we'll do the humming breath, and then we'll do the Hariom breath, which is called Utgit Pranayama, and I'll guide you through those. And there's two different ways you can do each of these. I'm going to quickly recap the scenarios which you would want to do either the first version or the second version of each, and then we'll go into chanting. So the first breath, the Brahmary Pranayama, this is the bee humming breath. And this is the one where we take a deep breath in, and then you exhale with a long humming sound. And the two versions are either you close your ears or you don't close your ears. If you close your ears, this is technically Brahmary Pranayama, where you close the little flaps on your ears and let your fingers drape over the front of your face. And you just make a long humming sound, and that humming sound goes internal and it kind of vibrates your whole body. This is a beautiful practice to reset the nervous system and balance the hormones, balance your whole neurochemistry. But the only time you would want to do this, or rather not do this practice, meaning you would do the humming without closing your ears, is if you have any kind of like really high blood pressure or low blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, active cardiovascular disease. If you're pregnant or on your menstrual cycle, you don't want to do this practice with the ears closed. And if you have any kind of like angina, chest pain, I already said cardiovascular problems, or a recent seizure, epilepsy episode, or an ear infection, because it could just be uncomfortable, because that humming is quite intense and goes internal. So if any of those things, or if you straight up feel lightheaded or dizzy today, you might not feel like doing it with the ears closed. So once we start the practice, you can decide if you're going to close the ears or not. And either way, you can put your fingers across your face, but we'll take a deep breath in and then exhale with a long hum. So let's do that one together. And mostly the same things go. I'll kind of get these little logistical things out of the way before we go into the practice. But the Untitled Pranayama, or the mantra breath, the Hari Om breath, it's all essentially the same things. If you're pregnant or on your menstrual cycle, you don't want to do this breath. The only other thing that's different is as we chant Hari Om, we will move our head back and forth, and just basically you tuck your chin down for Ha, and then you bring it up all the way up to Ri, so that your neck is all the way back and chin is towards the ceiling. And then you say Om as you bring your head all the way down, tucking your chin back down. And you just don't want to do the head movement if you have any of the things that I just listed, or if you have a detached retina in your eye, or high, low blood pressure. So if that's the case and you don't, or your neck is just really stiff and you don't want to go all the way back, you can just do a smaller movement with your head. Okay. Feel free to ask any questions. Andrew asks, can you do it if you have tachycardia? So if your heart rate is a little bit elevated, just sitting at home, it's not a problem to do either one of these practices. It's really only, in fact, they could calm the heart rate down. If the tachycardia or elevated heart rate is caused by advanced stages of some kind of heart disease or something, then maybe. But if you're just having some like stress or tension in the body and the heart rate's elevated, then this can actually help calm everything down. Thank you for asking. And really the most important thing with any of these practices is simply that that you listen to your own body. So at any time, if something feels off to you, as you start to move prana through your system, you just want to be really gentle with your body and not overdo it. So hi, Denise. Denise asked, if I've already done the humming breath today, is it okay to do this practice again? So Denise, we're just going to, together in this group, we're just going to do 3 of each. So it's reasonable for you to do 3 more with us together. That's fine. Unless it just feels a little bit too much to you. In that case, just don't hold the ears closed. Just do the humming without holding the ears closed. Okay? Wonderful. Great. Let's dive into our practices today, now that we got all the logistics out of the way. Okay, so just beginning with the Brahmary Pranayama. Before we start the humming, I'm just going to have each of you tune into your own breath. So place one hand on your heart and one hand on your lower belly, like just below the navel. and take a deep breath in. And as you breathe in, try to keep your chest relaxed and let your belly be soft. So as you inhale, your navel and belly should push into your hand, but your chest should stay relatively still. And then as you exhale, draw the navel towards the spine. That helps you push all the air out, and your lower hand will move towards the spine. All the while, the chest stays relaxed and still. So full, long, deep breath in the lower belly. Good. And take a couple more breaths there. Good. And this just helps us get connected to the fullness of the breath before we begin humming. Great. So on your next exhale, we're going to exhale with the hum. So before, just bring your hands up where your thumbs go towards your ears, fingers drape across the forehead or face rather. And we're going to do this breath practice 3 times in a row. If your ears are closed, you won't be able to hear me. And if you're just doing the humming without closing your ears, you would be able to hear me. But you're going to follow your own breath rhythm and go ahead and take a deep breath in. Close your ears or not and exhale with a hum. And when you complete, just return your hands to your lap and observe your whole being for just a moment of silence. Beautiful. And now the next practice is Untitled Pranayama, the mantra breath. You don't have to move your head at all. You can just chant the sound that you hear me say, which is Ha, Ri, Om, or Hari Om. If you feel that you want to move your head with it, you start with your chin down and you start Ha as you bring your head up, Ri as you bring your head back, and then Om as you bring your head all the way back, chin down towards the chest. So we'll do it 3 times with the head movement if you're doing that. And then we'll continue chanting Hari Om for a few more rounds after. And then take another moment of silence. So go ahead and take a deep breath in and begin. Hari Om. Hari Om. Hari Om. Head back to center. Hari Om. Hari Om. Hari Om. Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, 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 Hari Om, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om.
Hari Om, 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 Hari Om. Hare kalagnina kala padad utitana svakam puram. Plushtam vinchintaed ante shanta basas tada bhavet. Evam eva jagat sarvam dagdam dhyata dhyatva vikalpata. Ananyache tasa pumsha pumbha vaparemo bhavet. Live for a few days in the meditation. I am immersed in the flame of time, the flame of love, the flame of life. The universal fire flows through me. Step into that fire wholeheartedly, starting with the big toe, then surrendering everywhere. Only the not self, which doesn't exist anyway, burns away. Attend to this continually and awaken into tranquility. Your essence is renewed in the flame, for it is flame and knows itself as flame since the first heartbeat of creation. Imagine the entire world consumed by holy flame. Stay steady. Do not waver. As fire transmutes form into light, the soul reveals itself to itself as radiance. You, each of you, are a jiva, an extension of the flame of the Holy One, an extension of the spark of that divinity. And in your individual self, in your antakarana, this is known as Atma. Your Atma is your individual, eternal soul, your true self. The flame of your true self is your Atma. Your Atma is ever present, ever aware, and it is witnessing the components, the faculties, the fluctuations, and the happenings within your sensory experience in this world. And as your antakarana performs its tasks as this energetic organ. And the Atma is the flame that is still, that is witnessing it all. So your prana, energy, brings an impulse in through one of the five senses of your five sense faculties. What you see, what you hear, what you taste, what you touch, what you smell. Prana brings these impressions in, and the very first faculty of your antakarana that they touch is your manas. Manas is in essence your mind. It is the part of that we know of the mind that is experiencing like and dislike, craving and aversion. When this sensory impression hits the manas, you have an instant reaction of I like that or I don't like that. You touch something, you pet a sweet kitty, fuzzy kitty, you go, oh, so soft. Oh, I like that. You touch something like a cactus, sharp and prickly. Ugh, I don't like that. Ouch. Right? These are the instantaneous impulses from manas. As prana brings a sensory impression in, the manas immediately reacts and says, I like it, I don't like it. On a more subtle level, the manas is also drawing upon instantaneous memories and imprints from the chitta. The chitta is the part of kind of like your subconscious mind, sort of similar. Kind of like the subconscious mind. However, it's not equivalent to the Western concept of subconscious mind. So we will use the word chitta. Chitta encases, it's a storehouse of memories, but not memories only from this life. It stores karmic impressions through all incarnations that your soul has traveled in. So it's samskara. Samskara is a groove, a conditioned way of being, or our reference to this deep, deep storehouse of memory. If the thought of reincarnation or whatever is a little bit too esoteric for you right now or too high conceptual, even just think of, ancestral handing down of tendencies. So we tend to store, even this has been proven today in modern science, we store these energetic imprints of generations before us that went through traumas. So there were big studies even in holistic medicine, or just in medicine, Western medicine, and psychology that were done that showed that the children of 3 or 4 generations after Holocaust survivors still had these energetic imprints, these chittas, this chitta imprints, or these samskaras in our language, from the traumas that were endured from their ancestors. So these are lineage. These can also just be simply lineage imprints in our being. We don't know why we have these fears or these aversions, but they're stored in the chitta or in our samskaras. So the manas has immediate like and dislike, but it also draws from these imprints from the chitta. Once an impression comes in through the manas, the next faculty of the mind that digests is essentially, because the antakarana is like a digestive organ in a way. It's kind of digesting all the sensory information that comes in. And not just sensory information, but thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Which is why when we have unresolved traumas, why it often manifests in some type of digestive imbalance or gut imbalance or elimination challenge. And this is because our Agni, our digestive fire, this flame actually also digests all of your sensory input and the things that come into your 5 senses, but it's also digesting every thought, the tens of thousands of thoughts you have a day. It digests your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and if there's bandwidth in the background of things that have not yet been digested from the past, well, then it's kind of just holding that, and it just keeps stacking and stacking and stacking and stacking to the point where the digestive fire goes down. So one of the ways that we can help heal the digestive fire, the gut function, is by focusing on the energetic digestion of past and of healing these samskaras in the chitta. So sensory impression comes in, it hits manas. Manas says, I like it or I don't like it. Hopefully we don't react immediately based on, like reflexively based on manas, because this is part of where manas takes over and can, dictate your entire existence. It's like, I like that, I don't like that. I want more of this. I'm going to go towards more of this. This causes me pain. Get away. But the mind is completely preoccupied with just trying to get its insatiable wants, desires, and needs met. The mind has insatiable wants, desires, and needs. And all of our suffering as a human being comes from craving, aversion. More I like, I dislike. Craving, aversion. And so when we learn how to tame the mind and feed the mind the highest food, it helps break that cycle, which is why we feed the mind the food of pranayama, of mantra, of chanting, of things that are sattvic in nature. So we talked about the 3 types of driving energies of the mind, of manas. And that is sattva, which is harmony and peace and tranquility. We talked about rajas, which is energy, excitation, and agitation. And we talked about tamas, which is dullness and inertia, heaviness, lethargy, stuckness. So that dullness and inertia and excitation, agitation of rajas and tamas is what most of the world how the most of the world preys upon you as a consumer, and is also the food for the mind that perpetuates more of that suffering. So when an example of rajas is like a rajasic food for the mind is like scrolling on your phone or binge watching, entertainment. Not that any of these actions are inherently bad or wrong, but when they become just a reflexive food for the mind without your conscious involvement, it just perpetuates more instability in the mind. So we have to, and then tamasic, it's also rajasic and tamasic. So tamasic is like, tamasic wants to check out, dull out, and is usually the part of the mind that would be having a tendency towards addiction, substances, and things that are just totally numbing to the mind. And so those are all foods, those are all food options for the mind. But sattvic food for the mind actually initiates more of the harmonious, inner peaceful quality of the mind that allows us and supports us to not be so hyper reactive to the world around us. And it feeds the mind something productive, because the nature of the mind is to constantly fluctuate and need to consume. So the mind constantly needs to consume, and we can't get rid of that, right? Some of us, when we start learning about some of Eastern philosophies, we're like, oh, we've got to shut up the mind. This is an impossible task. Like, we can't stop the mind. The mind is constantly eating. So just feed it something really good instead of worrying about needing to, push it away or stop it from doing what's in its very nature. We can tame the mind. We can train the mind. We can empower the mind to be an ally to our spirit, and we can feed the mind healthy, harmonious, sattvic food. So the practices that we do together here in these workshops are sattvic food. Other things, examples of sattvic food is listening to guided meditations, guided visualization, music, sacred music, music that is rooted in various different like religious traditions that appeal to you, listening to nature, looking at nature, walking in nature, listening to nature sounds, playing with a cute animal. Fairly sattvic. It's like the rajasic side of sattvic because it's, engagement. Pure sattva kind of just looks like being just sitting in peace. Like even though this is sattvic food, it's still coming across to you rajasically because I'm speaking. That's like the healthy side of rajas. But studying scripture from a tradition that is centered around the essence of love and acceptance, because all religions have sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic expressions. So the sattvic expressions of various religious paths that you feel connected to all help bring forth the sattvic quality of the mind and give the mind something to focus on, to think about, to chew on, that is supportive because it's divinely oriented. Beautiful music, artwork, creating art, looking at art, engaging in arts and crafts. These are all sattvic foods for the mind. And speaking about the divine to friends, sharing about the divine, listening to divine talks, divine music. These are all sattvic foods for the mind. And then, of course, doing these types of practices. But recognizing that the mind is going to be insatiable, so feed it the highest food, the most harmonious, peaceful kind of food. And then the mind, the manas, so these sensory impressions come in. Manas hopefully is being fed sattvic foods, so it's not highly reactionary immediately. And it can just allow this sensory impression to go to the next stage of the antakarana, which is buddhi. Buddhi with an I, just like Buddha with an A. A Buddha has a perfected buddhi, and all of you have the potential to be a Buddha. Because you have a buddhi. Now your buddhi is your faculty of essentially reasoning and logic to some degree, but not logical in the sense of it has a higher logic. It's considered your higher mind. So it is a very clear faculty. So your buddhi has the ability to see reality exactly as it is without attachment and aversion of the mind. So your buddhi sits just behind the manas and has the ability to see reality as it is without emotion and without, distortion. However, the buddhi also draws upon the memory bank of chitta, which chitta can inherently have distortions and create a field of distortion, kind of like a veil that comes between the buddhi and what the buddhi is witnessing or seeing. So the buddhi, the important thing with buddhi is that we engage in practices that strengthen our buddhi, that calm the mind, tame the mind, and strengthen buddhi. So the practices that we do here together, they do just that. They help calm the mind, tame the mind, They feed the mind good, healthy sattvic food, and it helps to enhance and strengthen buddhi. And part of these discourses in this educational portion where I'm sharing with you, even just teaching you about the different faculties of the mind so that you can see it and witness it and create some separation between you and it, so that you don't believe you are it, but rather that you have this organ. This all strengthens buddhi to see things more clearly. And buddhi, in its purest essence, is the part of your antakarana that is a pure reflection. You know, I mentioned buddhi being like a flame last week. I'd say buddhi is actually more like a crystal. I have some crystals under here. I don't have a pure, clear crystal quartz, but here it is. Buddhi is more like a crystal, and it reflects the Atma, the light of your Atma, through the crystal. And the Atma is the flame. That's the flame of your true self. Look at how convenient. I didn't even plan this, you guys. Here. Oh, it's so pretty. So this crystal is your buddhi, and this flame is your Atma. The flame is eternal, ever burning. It has no source. It's eternal flame. It has no beginning. Its source is the divine. It has no beginning or end. And your buddhi is your individual faculty, your ability to be a pure reflection of this flame. But buddhi draws upon the chitta, and the chitta creates a veil or a distortion around buddhi. So we want to cleanse and purify the veil, the chitta. We want to rewrite our samskaras and cleanse and purify, so that this crystal of our buddhi is just simply a pure reflection of our soul. And the Atma. So the Atma is, so a Buddha, and we know of the Buddha. The Buddha is one who has cleared all the chitta, lifted all those veils of distortions, and whose pure Atma comes through this crystal, and you just see the light. But each of you are this. Each of you are this. The mind, attachments, cravings, aversions, sometimes dim the light, block the light, temporarily distort the light and your ability to see it clearly. So your practice around healing trauma, properly digesting the experiences of the past, comes from purifying, deepening your connection to buddhi, increasing the buddhi, taming the manas, and cleansing chitta. Any questions on that?
This is so beautiful. I really want to thank you for this, Alicia. I've had on my mind since last night. In fact, I'm noticing a nasal blockage that I've never had before. I was consulting with a very, very, very precious and beautiful friend who lives in Australia, and he told me last night that he was just diagnosed with nasal pharyngeal carcinoma. And this was like about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, my time here on the East Coast. And I went into a deep sleep after an hour or two. I told him I would keep it on my mind. And I'm noticing quite a mucusy condition in my own body mind, which I haven't had at all. So I'm just thinking that because I went to sleep with him on my mind, I'm I took I opened up my own sort of psycho-spiritual sinuses to look at and listen to. And I suggested to him in our texting, is it okay if I take this time? It's really on my
Keep
body
going.
mind.
Yeah, keep
Thank
going.
you, because I feel he is connected to this conversation. I've messaged him about this practice already while you were presenting it. I can't get him off. I don't want to get him off my mind. Because in the oneness, his condition is our condition, and our healing is his healing. And he's not going to find this in the traditions that are available to him there in Australia. I don't think he'll be turning to the Aboriginal people, who I do believe could help him. But I don't think that, I won't go into that. In any case, I'm feeling, because I so deeply in my own body mind connected to what was going on in his body mind over time, because we know in Ayurveda that any condition with a diagnosis like this is 6 stage of disease. And it started with first stage accumulation of incidents, one incident after another, after another, after another, of who knows how many years this has been accumulating, or perhaps it could have accumulated in the stress of the last year, and the whole fear and terror of the pandemic. I'm sure that's been on his body mind. In any case, I'm so interested in the condition that is manifesting in my own system. I think because of this connection with him, and perhaps even taking on, because I just connected with him so deeply. I asked him to begin to listen to what this condition in this particular part of his body. He just had ear surgery because he had been losing his hearing, and then it was found out following the surgery with MRIs that he had this nasopharyngeal carcinoma, which does include some hearing loss. So he's getting more to the physical root of the symptoms he's been having, but where I'm going is look to the psycho-spiritual root, and look to the conditions that have prevailed over a long period of time in your diet, right, in your relationships, in your lifestyle, your body, mind, consciousness. Most times people are completely unconscious of any connection between these things. And then, of course, I know he has spiritual practices, but not like this. And I did recommend a breathing practice for him, but I'm thinking that some of the things you're talking about here, I'm wanting to connect you with him, and I'm wondering if you'd be willing to work with him long distance, if he's willing.
Thank you so much for sharing, Sue. I really feel your care, and I'm sure we can all relate to those we love, in these types of healing situations, that we want to know what's the way that I can share with them, support them, empower them, and especially when we're individually waking up to various insights that are supportive. So just thank you for speaking up and for caring and for loving. And I do have some things that I'd love to reflect back for you that I think could be helpful. So yes, first, always willing to speak to someone who's willing to go down that path.
Good.
Sometimes, the most important thing is that person inside themselves has the willingness and conviction.
Right.
He does. Yeah. So
he
beautiful.
does. Yeah, he does. In fact, what initiated this this conversation with him was something that I had posted yesterday, an excerpt from a short prayer. And it said, "Oh God, give me a new life at every instant and bestow upon me the breaths of the Holy Spirit at every moment." And he responded to me that he definitely, he says, hold on a minute. He says, the recent operation I had at the hospital revealed that I have NPC, nasopharyngeal carcinoma. Please remember me in your prayers for a new life and breaths of the Holy Spirit in every instant hereon. And he subsequently said this several times, that he's definitely open to a new life and new breaths, more meaningful breaths. It's interesting how spirit gets our attention when we don't have body mind consciousness, when we don't include that in our daily living practice, awareness of when this happens out there, what's my first thought, what are my first feelings, how is it landing in my body mind, and then how am I clearing that out every day, like you so beautifully just demonstrated with the crystal. If we were to be aware and conscious in every moment and every day, we would be aware in the moment of something that's got stuck in our perception. Perhaps it's something we see, perhaps it's something we hear, something that we feel that we ignore, and then that accumulates over time until you've got a nasopharyngeal carcinoma, a massive blockage of accumulation of stuff, of just stuff. And we don't allow in our lifestyle, we don't allow the time or give the attention that they seem like just maybe a little speck of dust in the moment, so it doesn't seem to matter. And we think we do spiritual bypassing, and we just put it aside and think that we're just going to think something nice, and that little speck of dust is going to go away. Not necessarily. It can accumulate, even if it takes years, until it's got a name, until it shows up on an x-ray or an MRI, or a physical, literally a blockage that you can't see anymore, you can't smell anymore, you can't hear anymore. Your entire upper respiratory system is now blocked. And wow, what a way for life to get your attention. And I do believe and feel that it does have his attention now. He's an aging man. He comes from Chinese descent. He's an absolutely beautiful, pure-hearted spirit. I do believe that he will be open, and that would be the beginning, like you said. If he's not physically open in his body mind, because he's got now a literal blockage there, if he has indicated that he is open at the level where the accumulation began, and that's the psychospiritual perception of these moments of accumulation, these little small irritations, that if you just blow them off and you just ignore them and you don't clean them up. And if you think you're cleaning them up by maybe saying a prayer or even chanting, a mantra, without connecting to that irritating moment, but try thinking that we can bypass the irritating moment with a mantra. I do feel that this humming practice that you introduced could help to break up that mass in his I'm thinking it's in his sinus cavity. I haven't ascertained exactly where it is, and he hasn't shown me any images yet. I apologize for taking your time.
Thank you for sharing, Sue. You bring up some really beautiful points that I would love to reflect on for you and to tie it
Yeah,
back into some of the teachings. This is a really beautiful example and situation. So thank you so much for sharing your heart with us. And
and thank you everyone for so graciously and kindly allowing for this interruption. In a way, I'm going to cry. I'm so grateful because we're a healing group.
yeah.
We're not separate, and your kindness, your gentleness, your generosity to share this time, is it's like he may be just the lightning rod for the collective human race that has accumulated these little specks of dust, this irritations, this fear, this attachment, this greed. We want to go back to our normal lives, and we don't want to. We who most people don't know where to turn or what to do. Thank God for an ancient practice like this that you're sharing, Alicia. Because it's worked for thousands of years, and it'll continue to work for thousands of years. And we have to break through the kinds of resistances to this because of Western, indoctrination that the Western medical model is the only way to go. That's prejudice. That's racism. I'm sorry to bring this into it too, but this is all, I think, all part of, if we were to dissect the psycho-spiritual accumulation of his nasopharyngeal carcinoma, all of these things, all of these issues are embodied in those tissues, in that sick, diseased tissue, that's in his body mind. In one sense, you could say it's all in your mind, but I'm not saying it's imagination. I'm saying, no, you've manifested this on behalf of the entire human race. So in that sense, we're working on this together as a collective. And again, I really thank you for allowing me to go on like I do. This is what I do. And it's like, I can't help it. I have a lot of
Everyone's sharing prayers to you, and actually let's all just take a deep breath in, rubbing our palms together. Sue, we're gonna send you a love beam and your friend a love beam, and just all the prayers and goodness coming your way. Just seeing you both in your highest connection to the divine, having divine eyes and divine insights into the bigger picture of all of this, seeing the perfection and the goodness that is unfolding amidst life's challenges, all without bypassing and while also doing our due diligence to show up and support body, mind, and spirit to all align with nature and its natural, healthy function as best as possible for each and every one of you. And may you and he and all of us be able to connect to inner peace regardless of the fluctuations of emotion and adversity and challenge that we face. May we still remember the divine within all of that, and be at peace regardless of what's happening on the physical. Thank you so much for sharing, Sue. We love you, and we're all here with you. And I appreciate also your courage and vulnerability to share with the community and with the group, because this is all things that we can relate to. And even though, as you said, Vata can be high, and in terms of the expression and the sharing of that, this is what really is going on inside of our minds all the time when we're faced with either a challenge inside of ourselves or faced with a loved one who's going through a challenge that we just sometimes feel helpless to fix, and then we just want to impart wisdom, or we want to empower them to fix and heal, and we want to support everything coming back into balance. And so there are a few things that I just want to share in perspective around the things that you just shared, Sue. So if that's okay, I will continue reflecting. Amazing. So one of the things Sue mentioned was the 6 stages of disease formation. So I actually want to tie that in for just a moment, and then tie that into just bigger perspective, because Sue has been empowered with all of these wonderful teachings of ancient Ayurveda, holistic medicine. She's been studying this for a long time. And so there's an agitation that can even happen in our systems when we have insight into how something manifested for someone else, and we're like, oh, if only we could have caught it sooner, right? So the thing that she's referring to, the 6 stages of disease progression, and when she said, oh, when you get a diagnosis like this means stage 6. Well, there are 6 stages. The first stage is a stage of accumulation of toxins, physical or emotional, repressed emotions. As the toxins, we'll just summarize, call it toxins, whether they're physical or energetic, we'll still call it toxins. So toxins in stage 1 accumulate, and then in stage 2 is called the provocation stage. So basically imagine, kind of a gross analogy, but your toilet backing up. It starts to get provoked. It fills up because there's a clog and there's nowhere for it to go. And now in stage 3, it overflows and starts spreading. So in the body, toxins accumulate. It gets provoked because they continue to accumulate. They don't get digested or processed or released out of the body. It gets provoked and it overflows and starts spreading. So that's stages 1, 2, and 3. Accumulation, provocation, spreading. Then it spills over and starts spreading in the body. As it's spreading in the body, essentially it's spreading through your circulation. Physical toxins will back up into the bloodstream and start spreading through the body. And now it's looking for somewhere to manifest, because it's got nowhere to go. It's got to find somewhere to go. So it searches in the body for a weakened area for it to lodge into. And the weakened area is determined by the physical tissue or by a kavaigunya. In kavaigunya means a weakened space or defective space. And this kavaigunya can be established because of either repressed emotions. For example, unprocessed grief can create a kavaigunya in the lungs or in the pericardium of the heart. Unprocessed anger can create a kavaigunya, or susceptibility, of the liver, gallbladder, and blood system and the skin. Repressed various emotions, repressed fear and anxiety can create a kavaigunya in the kidney and adrenal complex and create chronic fatigue and exhaustion because the adrenals are depleted. So kavaigunyas can be created, these weakened areas can be created because of repressed emotion, or they can be created because of trauma, or they can be created because of samskara and karmic implications, and they can be created because of traumatic injury, like a football player, as you know, a child who is a football player or something, and they constantly got concussions and hit in the head, and then they have a kavaigunya in the nervous system later in life, right? So it could be just physical traumatic injury. It doesn't have to be energetic. But there's a various number of reasons why a kavaigunya. But as the 6 stages of the disease process, called samprapti in Ayurveda, these 6 stages progress. In stage 4, those toxins are depositing somewhere. So they deposit into one of the 7 bodily tissues. Then in stage 5, it manifests as a physical. So it deposits in stage 4, it manifests in stage 6, and then at stage 5, and then in stage 6, it differentiates, where the tissue actually morphs into something different than a normal, healthy human cell. That disease manifests in stage 6. So I just want to first give you context for Sue's share and what she's talking about here with her friend manifesting a cancerous diagnosis, a cancerous growth or something is always considered stage 6 because the cells differentiate and become something unlike a regular functioning healthy human body cell. And so the beautiful news with Ayurveda is that you can reverse these 6 stages by doing all the healing protocols. But what's really important here, so what I really hear in your share, Sue, and this is for all of you, is this, when you have this kind of information, when you have insight that's gained into a deeper seeing of the greater picture of health and disease, of illness and wholeness, and when someone that we love, we value their physical life like so much, we want them to be healthy, we want them to be vital, we don't want them to suffer. And empaths and highly sensitive people and people with huge hearts, we often overextend ourselves. And so I energetically even, I know for me, I was unconsciously taught that at a young age, worrying about someone is an act of expressing love. But the worry, right, I'm not saying that you're doing this, Sue, by the way, but this is a normal tendency. And so I can feel like the seeds of that in you if they're not actively happening. But that tendency to worry or want or feel, kind of helpless and hopeless to help someone, that actually doesn't support their healing, and it only can influence the stress in your own body to create susceptibility for your own illness. So what's the gift? What is the gift that we can give then, rather than creating worry or projecting worry, is to offer prayer. And the prayer is always in, sending light, love, and healing, but it's unattachment to outcome. The prayer is, may this person be empowered into their own divine connection, into their own connection with God, universe, source, the divine, so that they can reap the lessons and the learning and the growth and the love from this adversity that they're facing. So we don't need to pray for it to go away, because that is the type of bypassing, that you're speaking to, Sue. But the prayer is that somehow may this be of service. May whatever situation be of service to that divine awakening and connection. So that's one of the things that comes to me there. And then in terms, Sue, you mentioned now you're currently going through this nasal mucusy thing, and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's happening at the same time. Am I taking this on energetically, or whatever is going on for him? We need to be careful to not let our inner kind of martyr archetype try to take on the suffering and pain of others and process it inside of ourselves. That's a very real thing. We don't need to take on the karma of others to try to process it. Only like really great realized beings, gurus, have actually been able to do that successfully, but they end up suffering in their own physical health because of it. They take on the karma of their disciples to heal the disciple. There's a real effect in that. But at our stage of development, we don't need to do that, nor are we empowered to do that unless it's your divine siddhi to do that. It's usually an expression of that inner martyr archetype, and we can transform that martyr archetype into one that is one being of service without taking on the weight of others or the world like on our shoulders. So something just to consider for each of you as you navigate those connections. And then that aside, it could be just very simply that, Sue, I think you live in upstate New York or in New York, and we're in the spring season in the Northern Hemisphere. So everyone is going through mucousy things right now. It's just normal that in this stage of nature and seasons that kapha, the cold, damp, heavy, kind of immobile qualities of winter just start melting, and it's normal for even vata people to start having, mucus move and things like that because the snow is melting and the rivers are starting to flow. So that's happening in nature. It's happening in our bodies. And so some simple practices like oil nasya or neti pot, nasal pot with saline solution. You can do both of those, but 12 hours apart. I know you've studied Ayurveda. You're probably familiar with these, but sometimes when we're feeling emotional, especially around the news of a friend and a loved one, the tendency wants to go, sometimes we forget some of the basics. So, and for all of us, I just wanted to remind you that sometimes there are seasonal implications and there might be a synchronicity that's happening, but it also doesn't mean you're taking on from that other person or from that situation energetically, spiritually in any way. And you can just tend to your own needs. Make sure you're not eating any wheat, any cheese, any dairy, any meat, anything that's like too oily or too heavy that would promote more, mucus formation. And start to drink lots of hot tea and hot spiced teas, and do some nasal cleansings or eucalyptus steams, things like that to help expel the mucus. So I hope that some of those perspectives were helpful. I think I had a lot more even to share around that, but all in all, if your friend is looking for support, be happy to connect with him. You can send him the recordings of our sessions. He can also join us in any of these meetings or one-on-one. So it would be lovely.
Would you mind repeating that prayer that said, may this person be empowered to?
Oh, yeah. Not sure exactly what I said, but I'll give you the essence of it again. But the prayer is, may this person find inner peace regardless of the fluctuations of our ever-changing physical experience in life. And may this person connect with the divine, with God. Like, it's basically the prayer is empowering the person for their direct communion with the divine. Because from that, they will gain the insight on either the lesson that needs to be gleaned from the situation, or they will be empowered with right action to take, to correct it, to heal it. And it could be something that, you and I would never conceive of, but that can only happen through the direct communion with the divine. And then without any attachment, because the thing is, and this is the harder conversation to bring in here, but this really ties back to the flame of our true self is the divine. This flame of the divine, the flame of your Atma, the flame of your true self, has no beginning and no ending. Has no beginning and no ending. Can we even conceive of that with our human mind? We can't. We're brought to our knees in bewilderment around that this flame of the eternal soul has no beginning and no end. But we do know that our physical form and our physical life circumstances in the blip of this immortal flame come and go like that, and are rooted in nature and in cycles of birth, life, and death. And so that our physical forms will return back to the earth, and our everything and everyone that we know and love will return back to the earth. And so when we feed our mind and enhance our buddhi, the idea here is remembering this and to secure ourselves in the eternal truth, because that is the only place for sustainable peace within. To secure ourselves in that place and to pray for others to secure themselves in that place, so that we're no longer attached to these limited forms that will come to an end, that will have a season that ends, and that will, if we are attached more to the physical form, it will only create suffering for us. So, connect with the Atma, pray for others, pray for yourself to connect with the eternal flame of your true self, the only thing that can create lasting, sustainable fulfillment, meaning, and happiness. And then support the mind to not be overly attached to the limited forms that when they end will only create suffering if we put only our attention and focus there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say we don't value life. That's not to say we don't value healing. That's not to say we don't want to live the fullness of our a vibrant existence while we're in these human forms. It's actually empowers more of that, to love fully, to feel fully, even when the feeling fully is in the full range and the full spectrum of positive and quote unquote positive and negative, or feeling really good and then feeling really hard. This is the full spectrum of life, and it's all within joy. The fullness of our feeling and emotion is all contained within the joy of the divine. And true joy is the ability to feel the full range while we're here in this light, in this life, in this light. So I'll leave you with that. With all that said, I want to read this poem once more from the beginning that we shared in the beginning. Live for a few days in the meditation. I am immersed in the flame of time, the flame of love, the flame of life. The universal fire flows through me. Step into that fire wholeheartedly, starting with the big toe, then surrendering everywhere. Only the not true self, which doesn't exist anyway, burns away. Attend to this continually. and awaken into tranquility. Your essence is renewed in the flame, for it is flame and knows itself as flame since the very first heartbeat of creation. Imagine the entire world consumed by flame, flame of Atma, flame of the divine. Stay steady, do not waver, as fire transmutes form into light. The soul reveals itself to itself as radiance. Kala gnina kala padad, uti tena svakam puram, plushtam vichin taed ante, shanta basas tadha bhavet. Evam eva jagat sarvam, dagdham dyatva vikalpata. Ananyache tasa pumsa, pumbhava paramo bhavet. As fire transmutes form into light, the soul reveals itself to itself as radiance. Let's wrap up today with our closing prayer. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti. May all beings in all existence be at peace and be blessed in their connection with the divine. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May you all and all beings be at peace and be blessed and feed the flame of Atma, of your true eternal soul, the light and flame of your true self. And I hope that this session was helpful for you in that quest. And in upcoming weeks, we will continue to deepen that and continue to gather together in these practices. So lots of love and many blessings to you all. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti.